All right, everybody, it's June 16th, and we will jump right into the Miro board. All right, so let's start by going through the in-progress items. The new name, secure social domains, Reddits, are, before anybody says anything, are we allowed to mention the name out loud since we're recording, or should we just talk in general terms?
Yes, the latter, general terms.
Okay, so general terms. I guess this is Justin. Would you like to give us an update?
Yeah, so I think it's going to take around 2 weeks. I think that was from the start of the week. And yeah, they're going to put together the full messaging architecture, complete with aligned to the name, essentially. We'll get that back and we'll review it. And, there might be some iteration there. So it could be another week, it could be another 2 weeks. So it is a fluctuating timeline. So it's going to take probably between 2 and 4 weeks from the start of this week. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, if for some reason we don't like the name and everything together, then, that's a small possibility, but hopefully not. During this period, we're going to put together a single page website, probably closer to the end of iterating with the brand and messaging. It'll be a simple page, unless we want to do a more complex, add all the features of, the future of EOSIO on that page. But we at least want to establish, this is the new name, this is the socials, this is the high level branding. And people will be able to go to the new Telegram channel, or it'll just be the renamed Telegram channel, the new socials, and Medium probably, but it'll probably be limited to that, but we'll obviously have all the other socials secured. So yeah, there's a little bit of a flux there on how long it will take. We're not exactly sure, but I think we can get a one-pager done up within 1 week if it's really basic, 3 weeks if it's 3 to 4 weeks if we want to do something with visual backgrounds and everything in between. So that's sort of where we're at the moment.
All right, anybody have any questions?
I was curious. So you did secure the domain, it's in your control now?
Yep. Oh, that's a good point, actually. So we need to transfer that to someone. At the moment, it's in the control of CEDO, which is the middleman. Just in case there's some weird chargeback kind of thing, I think we should get it over to one of the providers. Jesse, you mentioned that the TCD can handle it. I don't have any preferences.
Yeah, I'm happy. I manage all of our DNS and domains, and if we wanted to add it into a Google or a Office 365 toolkit, I've done that enough before. I'd be happy to do that administrative work on the technical side.
The current proposal was for TELOS Foundation to build a splash page for the website, right? So that would make sense if you guys have an internal process. That would be good with me.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me then. And
I don't know if Lukas or Gnome have a different opinion, but I would be good with that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Same here.
Okay. Yeah, we run all our DNS under AWS Route 53, and I don't know where the website would be hosted, but just move the registrar to there and set up DNS for whatever we need. And then I think for now, I don't know, sample the rest of you, but I don't think we need email domains set up yet. But if we do, I'm kind of platform agnostic there. I've used them all and love and hate them all kind of equally. So, but if we do want an email set up initially for this splash page go live, info@tbd.com or whatever, right?
Yeah, we might need at least one. and have it
So
to forward to multiple people.
I guess that would be a question then for the group. What do we feel we need email on day one? So people like inquiries, press, whatever, we're gonna, be out there, putting our name out there. The inbounds of that, where should we do that? Does anybody have any
It's not
opinion?
obvious that you're using an email. If you're collecting email addresses in the background, you can make it go to any one of us or multiple of us, right? The only time you need the email is if you're going to reply back, like an auto response to them submitting their email or a form or something saying, thank you, or you want to list it on the website saying, if you have questions, email info@tbd.com. So
Yeah, that inbound, like email info@tbd.com would be kind of the main driver, I would think. But you're right. Then if we do get inbound on that, we should be able to go outbound on it as well.
yeah, but you could also make it where you're just using a form on the splash page that's set up. It says if you have questions, put your email address, or you could even be a form. They fill out questions in this form and they hit click and it goes into an alias, which can forward to like the 4 chain heads or something, or their delegates or whatever.
Yeah, I guess the question then is how, I don't want to say it's unprofessional if we don't, but how professional or cohesive do we want to present tbd.com to folks? We want to have press at tbd.com go out on any PR, etc. Right?
Yeah, so shouldn't we just register and the person that's managing the website gets a contact at tbd.com?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, if anybody has, if we're going to do that, does anybody have any strong preference about, Google versus Outlook versus some other cheap email hosting that's out there?
I think Google's easiest to deal with.
Yeah, maybe just go
Agreed.
Google. It's a good default.
Agreed. Yes.
Sounds good. Then we'll work towards then getting the domain set up, be ready to fire off any DNS we need for splash pages, etc. And we'll set up the MX records in a Google account, and then capture, whatever the cost is will be minimal, but figure out what we want to do. But we'll just do minimal, like just a G Suite setup for email that we can use. And the members of the coalition can, if they need, can have an email of their own, or we could just have a kind of like a big group collection one that just does forwarding. Even just we don't want to miss opportunities either. So we got to make sure we monitor that. So forwarding might be a good way for that to happen.
Sounds good. The only other thing is obviously make sure auto renewal is set on, and we have a few credit cards on file and as backups, and maybe alerts for when renewal comes up and stuff like that.
Yep. And we can book it out for a few years too. So
Yeah, maximum amount of years as well. Sounds good.
All right, anything else on that topic? All right, next item, market research. So this is me. We are about, I'm going to say 85–90% of the way through processing the data, and we should have a full report to distribute in the next couple of business days, maybe even sooner. We got the full first set of responses back on Monday, but just so everybody understands a little bit of the inside process, is we then had to process all that data to get rid of all of the clearly bad data. And what I mean is they put in 1, 2, 3 in like the 3 fields, or sometimes it's like, just keyboard characters. And so we filtered all of that out. We went back with the market research company. They did a second run, and then on top of that, a third run. And each time the amount of bad data gets smaller. And so the third run came back this morning. I think we look pretty good in terms of our responses. So now we're just going through that consolidation as we described a couple weeks ago, where, for example, if the word is speed, or if it's fast, or if it's transactions per second, we're grouping all those together. We're doing the same thing for other categories like security, transparency, so forth. Once we have that done, and as I said, we're most of the way through on that, we will just consolidate this into some a nice little report and send that out to everybody. So any questions on that? Okay. Next one, quality assurance, qualification of vendors for RFP process. Due to Kirsten being out, we did not discuss that this week. I mean, I think many of you have been out over the past week. So we will pick that process up when he returns, probably early next week. And that same thing with the topic after that, testing and acceptance strategy, we'll pick that back up as well. Now moving over to the agenda column. So the scalability Bluepaper. I know, Lukas, you were kind of in charge of that. Is there, do you have an ETA on how that's coming?
Yeah, so I have a draft going and I should be done by the end of June.
Okay.
So I'll share that draft with our group probably Monday, Tuesday, so we can actually discuss in the next meeting.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And Guillaume, do you want to make sure that is a agenda item on the scalability meeting, and we can move that forward?
Yeah, sounds good. I'll wait for the draft, and then once I have some stuff to work with, then I can bring it up in the scalability call.
Excellent. All right, next agenda item, the two in-flight RFPs, faster finality. We'll start there. So we did receive one proposal, and what I'd like to ask the overall group is, how do we want to approach this next step? Because Guillaume and Origin, it's from them. So should I send well, I can distribute the RFP to this channel perhaps, but do each of the chains want to review it independently and maybe we set up a separate meeting, or do we want to like carve out part of this meeting and then maybe ask Origin not to be here at that part? I mean, there's a couple ways to go. I just think we want to make sure that we have open transparency to the greater community and world that's watching this.
Can we do it at the end of this meeting, in an upcoming meeting, or and just Origin leave at that point?
So logistically, I'm fine with that. I would just also like to hear from the other chains if they also think that that seems to suffice.
I'd be curious, Guillaume, what would you like? How does that sound to you?
I don't mind. That's fine. Obviously, I represent the chain as well as Origin for the minute. So, I mean, yeah. I guess like if you guys want to discuss it without people from Origin being present, that's fine. No problem.
I'm fine kind of either way, but one other question I have. Initially, I understood it to be you, Guillaume, and also that you were pretty closely collaborating with ARIG and possibly others from ENF, former engineers. Is that still the case? I haven't seen the RFP, so I'm just curious how much like collaboration and overlap there is in terms of the RFP and the proposal.
So there's a minor, I guess, well, in terms of hours and like workload, there's a minor contribution by the ENF, which is actually quite significant in terms of knowledge and experience with the code base. But in terms of the contribution to say like the dollar amount, it's minimal. So I think ENF should still participate in that discussion. They should not be excluded. It's not significant enough, I think, to skew the process. So I'd say yeah, ENF should still be there, of course.
To add, we did not participate in the actual drafting of the proposal.
Yeah, I wasn't even suggesting that they shouldn't be here. And then I was thinking
The extent at which we participated was Guillaume reaching out and saying, how many hours can we earmark and what is the rate of those hours? That's pretty
Yeah,
much
exactly.
the extent.
Exactly.
That's it. So you'll see the line in there, but otherwise we did not, unless Jeff, you helped out, but I don't think we
No, I
participated.
did not.
And the reason I asked was nothing to do with trying to kick ENF out of
No, I think it's important.
It's a legit question.
I was just more trying to build confidence, just I'm already trying to analyze the proposal in terms of, how much, experience is behind the technical design and how much experience will be behind the technical implementation, just to build confidence in the decision to proceed and all that. So I'm glad to hear that some of those engineers helped with the discussion and the design and also be somewhat involved in.
The ENF was heavily involved in the RFP drafting, right? So the RFP part, ARIG was heavily involved in that, as well as Jeff were the ones who published it, but the bid, no.
I see, okay.
Yes, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Stan as well was involved in the RFP part, or is captured in the bid, or is that? I'm not sure if that's still the case, but
Well, initially when we on the Scalability Plus calls, Stan participated in the discussion, but I don't think he was involved in the RFP process, and he was not involved in the proposal itself and writing the proposal.
the one part that I think will be, and I don't have an answer to this relating to your question, Jeff, of whether or not UX should be present, is when we discuss the financial aspect of it. So the technical part, I think they should be present because we should be challenging through back and forth. But we've in a way already done that with the RFP. So it's really the bid. So it'll be the financial aspect of questioning and whether or not UX is present for that discussion. I don't know. That's always the hard discussion to have. To question maybe the rates, to question the overall cost, to question, I think, the timelines and stuff that could be present, because that would be more technical, but the non-technical aspects. Do we want to have a sense of the 3 other chains first and see what we're thinking and then bring them in? Or do we want to have them there from the onset? I don't particularly have a preference. If I would say the only caveat would be if Guillaume and Darren accept that it might be uncomfortable discussions.
So if we pretend for a second that they are a completely external vendor, then I would think the normal process would be we would engage that vendor to go through and understand the proposal directly, including understanding their financial breakdown. But then once we understood the RFP or the response, as well as we feel we need to, then the vendor would essentially go away, and then there would be the decision-making time. Do we want to accept this proposal or not? And that's mentally, I was thinking that could be a model where,
I like that approach.
Questions.
That would make sense. So then they'd be able to gather the information, then they step away, we discuss, we start talking bad about them behind their backs.
Right.
And then we bring them back in, and then we bring them back in. And then, because obviously the rest of the coalition would need to come to a consensus as well, right? That's the idea.
Yes, agreed.
I'd be okay with that. Would that work for others?
Yep.
That's fine.
Okay, so that's the other 3. That's the other 3 chains. So. All right, so Guillaume, we will make sure this is an agenda item for next week. And we might need to do this one somewhat early to make sure that everybody can be on the call.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, the next RFP. So Aaron Graymass is bidding on the Wallet SDK. But instead of an immediate response to the proposal, they came back and executed their right to ask some clarifying questions. So I have those, and that's I would say in a normal case, we would kick it back to the working group, but honestly, Aaron and his team has been pushing much of the working group activity. So that would be a little circular. So I don't think the questions are complicated. That could be also something that we talk about here. Because we're not talking about finances, I don't necessarily see any reason why Aaron, for example, couldn't be part of the conversation. I think it would be more productive if he was. So any thoughts on that?
I'm fine with him avoiding the circularness and just directly engaging.
Okay, so
yes,
we will.
yes, I'm fine. Sorry. Yes, I didn't know if we were waiting for. Yes, I'm good with that.
All right. Guillaume, Lucas, you guys also fine with that or concerns?
Yep, that works.
Good.
That works as well.
Okay. Again, I think that's easiest way to avoid bureaucracy. So good. All right. And we might even have time. I think I can pull those questions up today because they're not. Aaron, I don't have the list in front of me of who's on the call. Are you on the call right now?
Yep, sure.
Okay, perfect. So I can just pull those questions up in a second when we get there. So we'll come back to that. Status of the other programs and projects going on. Because so many people were out this week, quite frankly, very little else was moved forward. So we'll just get everything restarted this week, so that by next week, we should have a couple more RFPs getting close to presentation and voting. And then the last thing on the agenda, Brandon, this is for you, status of the biweekly report and approval, coordinating the meeting, marketing all chains to be organized.
Yeah, we're just kind of picking up where we left off after a 2-week gap with no recorded meetings, and just welcome everyone to resume media discussion in that Telegram channel we set up, and we'll get another report out to kind of fill in the gap here while we're still ruminating and preparing for the brand release, and just keep updating everybody about everything else that's going on with the coalition. So yeah, unless there's anyone else that wants to comment on stuff they feel like isn't being, I mean, we haven't had an update in a couple of weeks, but apart from that, any other priority items that need to be communicated about, just feel free to chime in.
So one thing that we did not communicate, which I'm not sure if we are open to doing so, is we did not make it public. We did make 2 public RFPs, and we had a deadline that has passed, obviously. We could potentially make that as part of an update, is we had 1 applicant each and call out who they are. I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone, but it would be confirmation.
Yep, that'd be a good one. Also, that makes me wonder, what are the next RFPs on deck that we're going to be able to publicize? If that's not totally out of scope for right now.
Well, so that might be a little bit of an offline conversation because like everything's in a different state and different teams need to somewhat re-engage. And that's kind of what I was referring to earlier. Some are really close and some, quite frankly, have sort of paused in their tracks. So and that's on me this upcoming week to get those things restarted, which again, we all, a lot of people are at consensus, a lot of people are out. So we'll just get that reinvigorated.
Being conscious of the current market at the same time, and the financial situation of, I can only speak for ENF, but we're definitely tightening the belt. Not having more RFPs out there isn't necessarily a bad thing from my point of view. The treasury right now sits at $2 million for the coalition, and likely a chunk of that will, or if not the chunk, the full chunk and more will go out to the two current RFPs, should they be, or the two current bids, should they be approved. I'm not necessarily in a hurry, and the market isn't necessarily in a hurry to dish out more funds at this stage, I believe. That would be my position. So we do have a few out there right now. I would rather focus on doing those well than necessarily having more and more out, and then we're stuck in a position where we actually don't have the finances right now to be able to handle them. I don't know what the financial situation of the other chains are. We did make the commitment for $8 million for this year. I don't recall the date which we first transferred it, the first quarterly payment. I would imagine that the second quarterly payment will be coming up shortly. We would need to go back at the table to redraft, or I guess, process the new numbers to see what the contributions would be. I think we need to have some serious discussions about the contributions of as a whole as well. No surprise, last time UX didn't have any numbers to provide, and so we went at the base. Do we still go there? We also need, I think, talk about financial contribution, human resources. Are we optimized that way? Are we doing it a little? Could we cut here and there? I think having those discussions will become very real over the coming months, as the market is likely going to be at this level and lower for the foreseeable future, and how that impacts our global finances as a coalition, or if it impacts. I guess that's a question, just having that discussion. And RFPs to me play into there very well.
All right, so that's the, any more comments or topics surrounding the marketing coordination?
No, just other than a renewed call to get representatives from all the chains in that Telegram channel so we can discuss kind of coordinating around the new brand.
Yeah, that came up with our PR team. So we will do a third-party PR push once we have the logo and branding, and we obviously have the name at this point. So getting, like we did with the first one, it could have a quote from each one representative from each chain. So our PR team advised us that 4 quotes is pretty much the limit, but that's good because we only have 4 chains. So even before the branding is affirmed by us, we could get the messaging crafted for a PR that wouldn't really shoot out until and be distributed for another 3 weeks or so. But we can get a head start on it. There's no reason we need to wait. Whatever opinion you have or whatever you want your quote to be, it's not going to change in 3 weeks. You're not going to be describing the logo design in your quote, most likely. So
Makes sense.
We'll coordinate that in the comms group that we have set up. I believe we have representation from all chains at this point, so no worries there.
All right. So is everybody ready to go on to Aaron's questions about the wallet SDKs?
Can't wait.
Sure.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we're not recording all of my other emails and such. So give me 1 second.
Are we recording the questions as well, or are we keeping this private?
So we should record.
Yeah, so
I'd say
normally
this should be
will-
open and transparent.
Indeed.
My vote.
Yep. All right.
Oops. All right. I'll share my screen again. There we go. All right. So Aaron, you can somewhat lead us in this conversation, but I believe the thrust of your question really is about the RFP was written in a way that was a really big ask, and you were looking for a little bit more specificity in some of these areas. Is that correct?
I think it's mostly a matter of priority. The writing we've done on this so far includes a lot of ideas about modules for this new system, and things like atomic assets, which are not part of the core protocol but are very widely used. That is, I think, the subject of maybe 2 different parts of those 3 items that are listed and being shown on the screen. There's maybe 20 or 30 of these options, and it's a matter of what is the highest priority for the coalition, and helping us figure out what that priority is. I mean, we could pick and come up with a priority based on our beliefs of what the chain is needed, but I think it'd be better if there was some kind of exercise that helped determine those priorities, so that way it's not us deciding and you guys wondering why we picked to do this thing over this thing. So
have you done like a dependency mapping kind of exercise where you look at you said 20 or 30 things, but I would imagine there's 10 or so that have to happen first?
I would have to look, but I don't think any of them are dependent on any others. All of the core, like the core data types, the core extensions, these types of things are just going to be built. And the optional stuff, or I shouldn't say optional, the stuff that we'd like to see built afterwards is all based upon that. I don't think they're based upon each other, but I could double check that.
Okay, so we're not discussing priorities of any of the core things that enable the like plugins and things like that.
Correct.
Those are given, those are
Yep.
in scope, and then you're asking how to prioritize the things that are optionally built on top.
Correct.
Can you describe a little bit more in detail items 1, 2, and 3? Or
yeah, I mean, those are clickable links that go to the example we did in the grant framework document. If you haven't read through this would be a great reference material if you're looking to get up to date on this. Like the API client extensions that are shown kind of there towards the bottom half. We have atomic assets. I guess to step back just a minute, these API client extensions are add-ons to the API client that exists in this framework for specific quote unquote non-core components, which is, like I mentioned earlier, atomic assets. We could work on a Dfuse plugin. VO has its own huge set of APIs, which I don't have to get into. There's Firehose, there's the V1 history if we prioritize that. There's Hyperion specific stuff. There's the resource provider, API endpoints for co-signing. There's our history solution, which gives some like granular stuff into the history of it. Like this list of 10 are things that are not critical to build the overall SDK, but can be built and put on top of it. So the way that we were originally anticipating building this thing out is taking 1, 2, maybe 3 of the highest priority items and building those as we're building the actual core software itself. So that way we are kind of dog fooding it in the sense that we're using the SDKs to build these extensions. And then the extensions would be really useful for a lot of the projects that are using the SDKs. There's a reason we put atomic assets up towards the top. It's just because that's been one of the very hot things recently. And they have their own API service that people run that has its own endpoints for querying collections and assets and all these other things.
so from a technical perspective, I would say it's probably critical that you get 2 or 3 of each of these identified, and you, as you build the core, you're also building implementation of an extension or type. So that way you don't, I mean, you can, if you had to build the whole core layer without an implementation that's going to plug into it on the other side, you're gonna miss
Exactly.
things, right? And just picking one, you might overlook something that is common between a few of them, or something that's not common between a few of them that you need to accommodate in that core layer. So
Yep,
the question
exactly.
is how to prioritize those, but I would say it, we definitely want you to provide, and even if it doesn't change how you build the core, it provides an example of how to build these for somebody else, right? So like looking at this, let's say, FIO doesn't make the cut for what we as the coalition fund you to build. But there's, of the other 9, there's 3 of them that are implemented as an example. FIO can just go in with that example and build their own much more easily than if they just have to go off documentation, right?
Exactly. So, and we know that we wouldn't be able to build everything. Like at the bare minimum, it will be the native APIs. That is the core API client is your get account, your get table rows, those core functionalities. And then these all go above and beyond that. But just like you said, these are going to be standalone things that anybody who has a custom API or a custom need will be able to reference this material to then build their own extensions easily for their own applications. Or maybe we do bounties and there's people that do pomelo pitches and grant proposals to build additional functionality on top of this that'll just add to the ecosystem.
So for expediency, what if you, kind of piggybacking on what Jesse was saying, what if you suggested 3 of each bucket and just brought this back to the coalition and said, hey, if we include these 3 from here and these 3 from here as part of the RFP, and then we can see if everybody is just good with that. And I throw that out as opposed to like doing a big prioritization exercise, because this is not a one and done, right? So we're just going to do the RFP. That means you're going to build a certain amount of stuff. But if the coalition wants something else later on, you can always come back and say, hey, can you build this too? We can have like follow-up discussions in smaller increments as opposed to creating one really large project.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, from my perspective, I agree. I don't want to go through a big exercise like we went through for the prioritization of 20, but and I trust you, Aaron. But for us from TELOS, I'm looking at this list. I don't know if we have, we have the contracts, but I don't know if we have the API up for atomic assets. FIO, obviously is very unique to them. I think we have Dfuse Firehose, but not the whole back end. So I would just say, like, I think picking one that's going to be common to all of us, where we all are going to be really happy with the first thing we can use, even knowing that the others would eventually come, would probably be an important thing. So if you came back and said, I'm going to do FIO, Roversky and, atomic assets, would be like, we can't use any of those at TELOS, right? So, but Hyperion maybe is a good one, because like I think every chain is using Hyperion pretty heavily, and then atomic assets I know is really heavily used on other networks and would probably be a fair choice for the group. But I don't know, just throwing that out there. If you're going to go make the call on which ones to propose, just keep in mind the 4 networks here and which of those 10 are being used the most, which I think you probably have a good handle on.
Yeah, we have a pretty good idea on it. And that list, I think we did all the lists in alphabetical order, so these don't show any preference. But we could probably come up with a rough priority and present it. There are going to be things that we would probably suggest that aren't on all networks, but then it's really going to be kind of up to you guys to hash that out, because maybe one network needs this and another network needs this, and I guess to kind of wrap it all the way back, it's so hard to estimate out what some of these are going to take in terms of effort, because we're both creating the technology behind it as well as the implementation for other technologies. So the way that the proposal will probably be written is that this is the priority of things, and we are going to get through them as best as we can with kind of the time and support that's being given. But I don't know, like if we pick atomic assets as number one, that could eat a significant amount of time that we just can't anticipate. Our team honestly doesn't know a ton about atomic assets. But if it is a high priority that we're not able to meet in time or whatever, that doesn't mean we couldn't try to coordinate with the atomic assets team or something and get them involved as well. So there's a lot of fluidity in this side of the proposal. And I think for us, it's confusing. I imagine for you guys, it'll be a little confusing. And just prioritizing that stuff is probably the first step in starting to evaluate them one by one. It's a lot to do.
So I think the action here then, Aaron, is you're going to come up with a list that you think everybody's going to be happy with, but then you'll just submit that list back to the coalition to give everybody kind of the once over to say, yes, this looks good. And then once they approve that, then you'll have really all the information that you can get at this point in time to start working through the RFP.
Correct. Yeah, that sounds good. And then we can present that. We can probably turn it around pretty quick. And then the answer and like decision on that is going to lead where the proposal itself goes. You know, numbers may change based on which things we pick out of here. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be expected. Yep. All right, did we wrap this up for today? Or any last minute comments or questions you have, Aaron?
Not on my end, I don't believe.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing the list from you. Obviously, everybody's excited to get this work going too. So, all right. Okay, these back to the list, and that wraps up our agenda items and in progress items. Anything else?
I don't know if Justin's comment in the chat was missed or if he can't speak right now, but he asked, is Dfuse Firehose getting ongoing support? I don't know who that was addressed to, or
Sorry, that was just a general question.
It is on EOS. It is on EOS. That's where I guess most of the development is happening.
I mean,
outside
like
of-
code development, like improving it. Like, is it something that will fall out of support? If I guess, like, I was just thinking of it in terms of prioritization of these. Like, are they getting support from a team? And you know, I know like Firehose is used by a lot of teams, so it probably is a good one. But we need to think about
so
how.
I guess the answer is yes. It is getting ongoing support.
Okay, cool.
Does that partially hinge on if, because I know, like I spoke with Alex and he really wanted us to independently push the graph to support EOSIO chains, because he has Dfuse and wants it to be part of that. But I think, does some of that hinge on it becoming a part of that? And I know we've talked about pushing through this coalition to get subgraph support for EOSIO, but do you think that ongoing support of that software hinges on the graph formally adding support to EOSIO?
Maybe let's shelve this discussion. I'll try to get information. If that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just curious. I mean, I'd love to see us in the list with subgraph, you know, of other networks that they support. But if that doesn't happen, I guess is my question.
Yeah, were we wrapping up anyway? We can stick around and discuss a bit, but if that's all.
Yeah, that's everything from our agenda items today.
Cool.
Good. Catch you guys. Have a good one.